Hello everybody and welcome back to the iCode channel. Today we're going to show you how to configure Batocera to work with Atari 2600 Stella Core from RetroArch. You've seen probably some of my other videos where I show you how to configure Stella 2014 on some of the other platforms with RetroArch, but Batocera and some of the other platforms do not have Stella 2014. And finally, I wanted to show you how to configure even the regular Stella. As long as you've updated to the latest release, the regular Stella Core for RetroArch should work with paddles on the iCode Duo device if you follow this video and configure it with the settings I'm about to show you. So first things first, I'm using a Odroid M1S here. It's much better than the Raspberry Pi in terms of its speed. It has a really 4-core CPU that can run even Nintendo 64 and PS1 games very smoothly, and potentially even some PS2 and Switch games as well. I haven't tried those yet. But the nice thing about the unit is very low cost. It's around $85 on iCode.com, and it includes a 64 gigabyte eMMC built into the main board. So it's really nice, and it's got some HDMI output, a network interface, as well as USB. And it's powered by a USB-C port, which is nice, so you don't need to use one of those regular power supplies. Instead of, you can just use any USB power source as well. Okay, so I've got this thing configured with Batocera, the latest version. And the first thing you want to do, I've also got a keyboard connected to the device as well as my iCode Duo. But I want to first make sure we get the settings correctly on the Duo. So first things first, you go to the menu by pressing the green and the red buttons here on the unit. And you'll notice that for my stick as, I've configured to point to the left port. We'll be changing this as we program it. In fact, I'm going to start it out in D-pad mode. So I'm going to go ahead and press the green button to change it to D-pad. And then for paddles, this is very important. For paddles, which is blue button, I'm going to go ahead and push blue. Make sure it's configured to right, which is paddles as to show up as a right analog stick. And you can flip this by pushing the red button like this. You can see this is left and this is right. So make sure it's set to right. And then the other settings you want to make sure you have right. I'm going to go ahead and push yellow to exit out of this menu and go into the white, which is the other menu. Make sure the console is set to Atari and mouse is set to off, because if you got mouse set on, it's going to try to use the mouse settings, and mouse are not great for paddle games or on Stella Core. You could use mouse with Mammy, but not with Stella. I recommend you leave that on off. And then you also want to check your configuration menu, which is the black key here, and make sure your buttons as 1, which means all these buttons on the device are going to report to port 1. And if this is set to 2, it's not going to send all this information to this port. It's going to instead set it to port 2, which won't work correctly. So make sure it's set to 1. And then when you get to the main screen, you'll notice there'll be A, which means Atari, and a 1, which means these buttons are reporting to port 1. This is exactly what we want. The other thing that we want to check is that these 4 buttons are mapped correctly to the right joystick buttons, and then same thing with these 2 buttons. So if you noticed, I'll go back to the menu, which is the green and the red, and then there's a buttons selection here, which is I believe red. So if I go to red and I ask you to which button do you want to map, let's start with the green button. Make sure the green button is set for button 0, because that's our primary button. It might be set to 1 like this. If it's set to 1, push the green button to lower the number to 0. And once it's on 0, press Y to save, yellow to save. And then check button red. So we're going to go through all the buttons here. I'm going to push the red button here to get into the buttons programming mode. And then I'm going to press the red button again because that's the button I want to map. And you can see it's already set to 1. This is exactly what I want. If it wasn't set to 1, you can push up and down to change that. And you'll do the same thing for the blue button. So that should be set to button 2, and yellow should be set to button 3. And then these two here, let's go ahead and check them. I'm going to go ahead and check the black button here. You can see it's set to 7. And I'm going to exit out. And then I'm going to check buttons again. I'm going to check the white button, and that's set to button 6. So 6, 7, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's the buttons. All right. Now that we've got all the buttons set, I'm going to use my keyboard to go ahead and get to the menu here. And on the menu, I'm going to go ahead and go to the controllers. And for controllers, we're going to do the mapping. I've got my joystick connected to port 1 right now. That's how we're going to start. So I'm going to go ahead and enter and click OK. And it's going to say which gamepad do you want to configure. So I'm going to go ahead and push this button and hold it down till we get to this screen. Now, we're going to go ahead and do all the button combinations. East, which is the red, south, which is the green, north is yellow, west is blue. And then this is going to be my start button, the black, and the select button is going to be the white. And remember, I set this to D-pad, report as D-pad, so it's already set. So I'm going to push up. And notice it says hat up. I'm going to push down. It's going to say hat 0 down. I'm going to push left and right. And then I'm going to go ahead and push down arrow on my keyboard because I'm going to skip the shoulders since we don't have any shoulder buttons. And this step is very important. On the left analog up, we're going to go ahead and go to the menu and switch the key stick as to left. I'm going to go ahead and push the green button to change it to left, like that. I'm going to push yellow to exit. Okay, now for analog up, I'm going to push up on the stick. Notice that it said axis 1 negative, and then left, I'm going to push left on the stick. It's going to be axis 0 minus. Okay, and then for the right analog up, that's where the paddles come in. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this port here for the stick. I'm going to stick my paddles in. And then I'm going to go to the right, all the way to the right for my paddles to get detected. And notice that it this is the top key here, and this is the bottom key. Okay, so I'm going to push up again here because I want to overwrite these. So for my analog up, I'm going to use the top one. I'm sorry, I'm going to use the bottom one, which was this analog, this one here. And I'm going to go to the left for it to. Okay, it thinks it's taken. Let's try this one. There we go. Push up. And do left. Okay. Go ahead and push right. Right. I'm going to go up again. I'm going to overwrite these two. So when it's on analog up, it's going to be my bottom. And I'm going to go to the left. Like that. Okay, so it should be 3 minus. That's correct. And then this one, I'm going to go this one onto the left. Okay, not defined. Let's try that again. There we go. 2 minus. Okay, so that's axis 2 negative and axis 3 negative. That's exactly what we want. And then I'm going to go ahead and go down to the OK button and hit enter. And yes, I'm going to go ahead and set the select key as my hotkey. That's the white button. And we are done. So now this red button should act like a back button. See, that's back. And then green button is going to be acting like a select button. So there it is. I'm going to go ahead and connect my joystick again. I'm going to try a quick joystick game. I'm going to go ahead and start combat here. Okay, and I want to go ahead and push start button. Let's start. And there we go. So you can see I can moving. And then I can push the fire button. It's working correctly. Let's try player 2. I want to move this to port 2. And here's player 2. That's working as well. Okay, so it's all good. Now pressing select and start at the same time will exit the game. Now my paddle games are probably not going to work yet, but let's go ahead and give it a shot because I haven't configured them correctly yet. Because paddles require some special configuration. I'm going to go ahead and go to breakout and see what it acts like. All right. You can see on port 2, nothing's happening. On port 1, okay, it's moving, but it's going all the way to the right and all the way to the left because my paddles are not connected. Let's go ahead and connect the paddles. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and go to the right left. You can see, then right left, but nothing's happening here. So what we need to do is we need to set RetroArch correctly to work with these paddles. So that's what I'm going to show you next. If you have the keyboard connected, you can push F1, but if there's no keyboard, you can push the white button and the green button at the same time. That's your hotkey, and then button 0. That'll take you to the screen, which is your quick menu. So what we want to do is we want to go down to your controls, and then for player 1, port 1 controls, I'm going to push up arrow. You'll notice that my axes are set to the left analog. Now what we want to do, port 1 will be our player 2, and I'll explain that later, but because port 2 is going to be player 1, but there's no way to configure it. For some reason, the Stella Core, it's hard-coded to a particular left axis, so that's why we cannot change this currently. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to blank, and then since this is going to be player 2, it's going to be up and down on the right analog. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to axis minus, and then this one to axis plus. So that's how you want to set the axis for port 1 controls, which is player 1 controls for RetroArch. Let's push F1. Actually, before I go out, you also want to set the A button to act like fire as well. So set that to fire. And I'm going to go ahead and push F1 to exit. So now you can see my paddles are actually moving quite nicely. So that's the, let's see, I'm going to go to a 2-player game here. And I'm going to push fire button. My paddles are kind of dirty, so that's why you're getting jitter. Yours should be fine. Now player 2, notice it's not working. So that's what we also have to set up this one. So this one is going to require a little bit change again. So I'm going to go push the action, the hotkey and the green again to get to Stella. And then I'm going to go back to out of the quick menu to the main settings. Okay. On the main settings, I'm going to go ahead and go to input. And we're going to go down to port 2 controls. Now, port 2 controls in RetroArch simply means player 2. But player 2, which is port 2 controls that I'm on, it's actually they're going to be the second paddle on the physical device port 1. So we got to change this device index to point to port 1's device. So we want it to connect to the first device. So that's why we want to change that like that. That way both player 1 and player 2 will be game adapter number 1, which is port 1. And then port 3, which is player 3, and player 4 should be connected to this device's second port. So let's go ahead and, while I'm here, change those two for 4-player games. So I'm going to go ahead and change this device index to the second port here. And then I'm going to go ahead and change port 4 controls to also the second port device. Okay. Now that we've got those set, we're going to go up here, and you'll notice that I have my configuration set to save remap files on quit. And instead of a global file, I'm using it's off. So it'll save a different config file for different cores. So I don't need to manually save it. If I wanted to manually save it, I could have done that obviously by going to here, and no, this is the game saves. I think it's anyway. I see it's under configuration, I believe. There we go. Actually, it's going to be in the quick menu here. Their overrides. I'm going to go ahead and save the game overrides so you see it. Notice that it created a game override for Breakout for its configuration. So those port settings that I changed, because on Combat, for example, we wanted the ports to be player 1 to be port 1, device 1, and player 2 to be device 2. So that's why you want to save them this way. Some people put all their paddle games in a directory called paddle games in the ROM's 2600 folder. That way you can save content directory overrides instead of a single configuration. All your paddle games would get a directory override. That's possible too, but for now I just saved it as a game override. The next time I start it, it should be fine. And then let's go ahead and check it. I don't think it's going to work still, but let's give it a check. F1 here. This is player 1, and let's go ahead and start the game. And I'm going to go ahead and go to 2-player game here. So that's player 1 is this one. And then this is player 2. Notice player 2 is also working. There it is. Now my button for player 1 wasn't working. This is the button I'm pressing, but it's not working. So remember that I need to go into quick menu under my controls. For 2 controls, also want this A button to be fire, not trigger. Okay, that's good. And I'm going to go ahead, manage my remap files, and I'm going to go ahead and save my remap files too, so that my game is set up for those button combinations as well. So we're set here, and I'm going to go push F1. So now let's see if so the mouse is moving. This one's firing. That one did not fire. This one's firing. So it's probably, let's try one more time. I'm going to go to controls. Probably port 1 controls I left by accident. Oh, I don't know why this one is set to down. I must have hit it by accident. This is supposed to be set to fire. Button A. Okay, there we go. Now it's working. So both buttons are working nicely. Okay, so I think that gets this one working, and you're going to do the same kind of a process for the second port. You just have to set the axis like I set up for the first port. We already set it up in the main menu. Now you have to do it in the quick menu and set these up. So I hope this was helpful to you all. If you have questions or comments, please leave them in the messages below. I'd be happy to answer them. And good luck with Stella, and have a great day. Take care.